good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to day one of webinar week number 2 here with Beyond Pulse, and the very first in our exciting new player series. So I have Mr. Mark Wilson, who's obviously going to co-pilot this with me today, but we're delighted to be welcomed by Miss Ellie Jean, all the way back now from Denmark, in the snowy Connecticut.
Yes.
Before I let Ellie introduce herself, obviously the topic for this series, as we've shifted a little bit away from just an emphasis on coach education to wanting to support the players in understanding a little bit more about their journeys and tapping into the experience received from people like Ellie. And obviously, for those who don't know, Mark, who had a long and esteemed playing career in England, and specifically starting off at Manchester United. So I'm spoiled to be joined by the two people that I have on the line right now. But Ellie, if you could, for the purpose of the people listening, please provide a little bit of an insight into you and your background to this point and your journey so far.
Yeah. So hi everybody. My name is Ellie Jean. I am from Coventry, Connecticut, the lovely Connecticut. Yes, it's very snowy today here, so loving that. But yes, I grew up in Coventry. I played club soccer at Oakwood in Connecticut out of Glastonbury, Oakwood Soccer Club. And then I went to Penn State and played on the women's team for 5 years because I had a 5th year. And I've had the privilege of being in the youth national team system. I've had a lot of awesome and really cool experiences that I'm sure we're going to talk about. And now I'm a current player in Denmark. I play for FC Nordsjælland, and that's out of Farm, Denmark. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, but I was really enjoying that experience. So I'm really bummed that I had to come back home and that all of this chaos is kind of going on. But I totally understand, and I hope everybody is safe and healthy. And I'm glad that everyone's here to listen.
Amazing. Well, Ellie, again, thank you ever so much for sharing your time with us and with everybody on the line. So, guys, again, just for the people that are tuning in now, please feel free. There's a chat function. Jump in with questions that you might have for Ellie. Myself and Mark will tackle some, and Willow, I'll probably shoot a few your way as well as we go throughout this. And Ellie was very modest there. Obviously, while at Penn State, there was a national championship as well. So
I guess I left something
that. Very fortunate to be able to tap into somebody with the experience that she has. So Ellie, me and you spoke offline a little bit earlier, and I tried to give you a little bit of a heads up on a conversation that we had heavily with coaches last week around what one of our dear friends calls a rule of one moment. And the rule of one moment is when, for the coaches, it's about one comment, one time to one person can change a life forever. And I gave you Mark's example. And I'm just curious, Ellie, as to whether from a player's perspective, you have something and a conversation with a coach that really stuck with you and has guided you on your journey to this point. Is there anything that you could think of to share?
Yeah, so I was like trying to think long and hard about this, and I have a lot of like journals, like soccer journals that I keep, and I've gone through a ton of them, and I wish that all of them were in Connecticut with me, but they're not, because I'm sure I would have found something in there as well. But no, yeah, I've had the privilege to play for a lot of really great coaches. And a lot of them have impacted me in a very different way. But I would say one thing that I've always tried to carry with me was at my first national team camp. That's like the ID camp with like 100 or so kids, like so many kids or whatever. And you're just going and you have no idea what it even is, and you're just going and having fun and meeting new people and getting to experience all these awesome coaches that are there. And one coach, I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but we were split up into all of these different groups, and he happened to be my coach for the week. And we had individual meetings at the end of the week, and he told me that the way to get really good is to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I've always tried to carry that with me throughout my entire journey, throughout all of my training. And kind of put a positive spin on when I'm feeling really uncomfortable, that it's actually helping me in the long run, in whatever situation I'm in, whether that's relating to soccer and on the field, or whether that's another situation off the field, is kind of applicable in so many different areas. But that's something that I've always tried to carry through with me. Like if I feel like I'm being challenged, and if I feel a little uneasy about what I'm doing at the moment, it's helping me. It's pushing me in the direction that I want to go in. So that's one thing that I've learned that has really stuck with me through the journey so far up to here. Um,
Ellie,
so yeah.
that's so amazing to hear, because it's a phrase that, from a coach's perspective, both me and Mark and many people on the line will have had that conversation with players that they work with. So it's really nice to hear that that's kind of resonated with you. If you could
Yeah.
just, in addition to saying difficult moments, provide any indication or an example of, what that might be, both on and off the field, from situations that
Mhm.
you've been
Yeah, whether that's like, I don't know, you're working on a new move and you just like can't get it down, and like that frustrating feeling of like wanting to get it so badly and feeling uncomfortable that you can't do it, rather than continuing to work on things that you're already good at, is one thing that I've really tried to do and work on. But yeah, at Oakwood, I grew up playing for my club team for the girls' side, but I actually trained and had the opportunity to play with the boys all throughout like high school. I didn't play high school soccer, so I actually trained with the boys like all fall and all spring, as well as my team. When we were in season and etc. But that was a very uncomfortable experience for me. Not just because it was like a gender difference, but I totally felt out of my element. And, with the girls and who I was playing with, I felt like I was good enough, and I felt like I could, my abilities were good enough. But then with the boys, it is a whole different dimension. Like I'm not the fastest one, I'm not the strongest one, I'm not the most technical anymore. So having been put in those situations was extremely uncomfortable at first, and like even socially, just, like not really having any friends, and it just kind of being me versus the boys. But they were actually really welcoming, and I ended up making a lot of really great friends out of playing with those boys for the 4 years um, throughout my high school years. But I would say like moments like that, like put yourself in uncomfortable situations, however you can find, because they're going to pay off in the long run, and they're going to help you achieve what you want to achieve. If you can put yourself in that little uncomfortableness right now, soon it won't be so uncomfortable. So I had played with the boys for 4 years, and by the end of the fourth year, like it wasn't as uncomfortable as it was initially, because I had created friends, and then I built confidence, and all of those things. So I think that's just really important.
That's amazing. And Mark, do you want to jump in? Because I see you smiling about things as Ellie speaks there. Anything that you can, that resonates with you?
Yeah, I think transitional moments are really uncomfortable. There's
Mhm.
a big push at the moment in the professional game for experienced individuals to work with players who are transitioning from the elite youth end to the first team environment. And it's no
Right.
different from coming out of high school and going into college, and then going from college
Mhm.
and going into a pro level. And it looks
Exactly.
very different. Even in your own mind, you have a perception of what it might be to move into these different arenas and environments. But there, anything from gender differences, Ellie, that you mentioned. But if you're in the same gender, it can be generational in
Right.
terms of things that are discussed in a locker room. There can be
Right.
play. When you're the new kid on the block stepping into a new environment, everybody's looking around, going, "Whose place does this go on? Whose place does this player want? Are you
Right.
my place? You're a midfielder. I'm a midfielder." And naturally, it's a competitive sport, and as friendly as people can be sometimes as well, they're also looking after their own best interest, because they don't want you to take their place. So there's a
Absolutely.
number of uncomfortable moments as you progress through the different layers of soccer that you have to learn to deal with. And that's why I think we've talked about it all last week on these coaching podcasts. The psychosocial development, Ellie, it is probably going to be one of the biggest evolutions that's going to help the game progress forward, or help players progress forward in terms of development, because it's one of the most untapped areas of the game right now, the psychosocial element. So for anybody listening on this call, if you can work with somebody or have access to club resources that's really focused on that psychosocial development, I would really strongly suggest that you start to move towards understanding what that looks like and how having mechanisms in place psychologically to support that transition can really help.
Right. Exactly. Sorry, I just have to let my dog out. Hold on. Sorry.
Right on cue.
This is the beauty of live recordings, boys and girls. There
Sorry
we go.
about
No, that's fine.
So Willow, I think you bring up some really great points. And Ellie, what I want to talk to you about now is it's so great to see, you know, so many players that have tuned in for this. I want to talk to you about, you know, going through that journey, and you know, you've spoken about where you came from and Oakwood, and it's a great segue into what came next. I said to you on the phone earlier that I remember 8 years ago, 9 years ago, when I moved to Connecticut, yours was the first name that I heard about. Watch this girl, because this girl could be special. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how you felt. So you're in an uncomfortable environment, you're training with the boys.
Yeah.
You weren't doing high school soccer at that point. There's
Yeah.
pressure on you to perform and to fulfill expectations upon you. How did that feel? Were there any challenges kind of going through that process? Obviously, if we've got high school players on the line,
Right.
you know, there's what's going on. So how was
Yeah.
that for you?
So, yeah, let's just start off. So I was playing at Northeast United out of Mansfield. Do you know that club at all, or?
Yeah, NEU, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I was playing there, and then my mom actually came to me and she was like, "Oh, like, do you want to make something out of soccer, or like, are you just doing it for fun?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess I like didn't really think about it." I think this was seventh grade around. And I was like, "Oh, I didn't really think much about that. I wasn't thinking much about the future. I'm 12 or whatever, you know." So I end up going to try out for Oakwood, and I make the team, and I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go. I was like, "Yay, made the team, but okay, like I'm still gonna play at NU. Don't want to take that next jump." And my mom was like, "No, like I really think you should. Like if you want to make something out of this, like this is the best club in Connecticut that you could be playing at. Great resources, everything, etc. Like you need to play here." So that was obviously something very uncomfortable to me. I'd always been playing for fun, and then all of a sudden it seemed more serious at Oakwood, a little bit more pressure in that aspect. Um, but I remember specifically, it was like my first couple of practices with the team, and everybody was so good. Everybody was so good. Like I had zero confidence, didn't want to play anymore, etc. And Matt Cameron was coaching me at the time, and all he would do was yell at me. All he would do, all practice, yell at me. Every time I touched the ball, he would yell at me. And I was like, I just don't want to get yelled at anymore. I don't want to get yelled at anymore. So I'd come home every day before we'd have club training, and I'd just juggle the ball and outside for like 2 hours or however long, I don't know. But I would just juggle and just like work on my touch because I didn't want to go to training and get yelled at by Matt Cameron, which he was actually a great motivator, obviously, in that sense. And like just from juggling and doing those little things like self training and stuff like that, I was able to become this player that I didn't even know that I could become. So then I started getting recognized and stuff like that. So then I started going to like the little scouting camps that like the region would hold, and stuff like that. And I would go, and then I was like, okay, like maybe I'm better than I thought I was, and etc. So then it would like build from there, and then I get more motivation and I get more confidence, stuff like that. So then yes, that's how I ended up being called into like the youth national team system, and that's how I got started. And then from there I was like, okay, like this is fun, like I just want to see how good I can get type thing. But yes, obviously then there's a pressure aspect. But I honestly I didn't feel that as much from outside resources. Like obviously within the national team, like that's pressure in itself, but I didn't feel that much at Oakwood. I didn't feel like some sort of like everybody was expecting me to do these things, but I felt like I was putting all of that on myself, which I think is really important as an athlete to talk about, because that pressure can be very detrimental. But yeah, so I felt that I put a lot of the pressure on myself, not from outside people. So like my parents, they never put pressure on me. It was kind of all me that had these grand expectations for myself that either like weren't realistic, or like weren't achievable at the moment. And I would literally just like consume myself in all this pressure. Like I'd get nervous before games, like usual, but because I was doing that to myself, not because other people were coming to me and saying, we have these expectations for you and etc. Um, and I still felt that all throughout college. Unfortunately, like I even started going to like our like sports therapist at Penn State because I was like, I can't take it anymore. Like it's not even fun anymore for me to be playing this game because I'm putting so much pressure on myself and not getting it from anybody else. Obviously, at Penn State, there's expectations in itself, and that comes along with just being a teammate and leaning on your teammates in times where things are getting tough and you're not reaching the expectation. We felt that a lot at Penn State. We were losing games sometimes that we shouldn't have been losing, and then it was like, okay, like let's come together as a team. But when you're individually putting pressure on yourself, like there's nobody else to lean on, and that can be very difficult for one to handle, for an athlete to handle when you're putting the pressure on yourself. So I've really tried to work on that these last few years, and it's been like there's been such a difference. And obviously, there's always going to be like outside pressure, like now that I'm a professional, like all of that, playing at FC Northland, like all of that. And I think, I don't know, just like honing in on what you know how to do and what you can do best has been important to me these last couple months and these last couple years. Like I know I can do this really well. I know I can do this really well. So I'm gonna have confidence in that, and that's all I can expect from myself at the moment right now. But when it's like internal, that's where it was really detrimental for me because I was just putting so much pressure on myself. And I know that other athletes experience that as well. So it's totally something that's common. Um, but yeah, I think that just to be, I started to be a lot more nicer to myself when I'd make a mistake. It wasn't so much like, oh, you suck. It was like, okay, next one. Like you're gonna make mistakes. Like you can't be 100%. Nobody can be 100% perfect. That's unrealistic. That will never happen. So just little things like that. But I've had the privilege to not feel a ton of pressure from outside influence. My parents were always really great. Never put too much pressure on me. It was always kind of me motivating myself to be the best that I wanted to be rather than them telling me I needed to do it or etc. Or even the coaches that I've had, nobody's ever, I've never felt that directly, but I've put a lot of it on myself. Um,
There, there's so much to unpack with what you've just said, and I really,
I said a lot.
I really appreciate the candor that you just spoke with, and honestly
Yeah.
the vulnerability and the openness that you just shared, because I think it's so important that people hear
Yeah.
the feelings that you have as young players, not even as young players, as a player period.
Yeah.
It isn't just you, and some of the struggles. Obviously, we had, we referenced Dan Abrahams, a gentleman that we had on last week, who's a well-renowned sports psychologist now, and working with players to do what Mark said at the start of the conversation, which is build that psychosocial competency and really work on harnessing the skills and abilities there. So I think that there might be questions on that we can kind of come back to.
Of course.
I just want to dig in on a couple of the things that were questions that I had, but you kind of answered them already. So the importance of individual training, maybe Matt was unaware that his behaviors, motivated you to go and want to get better by yourself, not being asked, but the willingness to go and put in time by yourself away from the field for you. That was clearly something that was super important, and the resilience to be able to handle, it goes back to what you first said about being uncomfortable, being uncomfortable, right? And the resilience that you displayed in overcoming a little bit of adversity. I think that's a really fantastic message. The last thing that I want to ask you about, and I do want to get into college life, and it's the concept of me versus you or me with you, and especially as teammates, you've both referenced that there might be transitional moments where people, Willow, we've just lost you.
Give me 1 second, mate. Now I have to let my dog out.
Oh, okay. So Ellie, moving into college, and I want to talk about how you got there and the process, but once there, you said, you know, sometimes you can lean on people. So, you know, me with you is we're both trying for the same thing, but we're going to support each other and we're going to push each other and we're going to understand that competition is part of our
Yeah.
sport.
Mm-hmm.
Versus me versus you. So it's like, hey, I know we want the same thing, but I'm going to almost push you away and not let you in to help me. Like, how was that? Speak as a, you know, as a female to the females on the line, but also just kind of soccer in general.
Yeah, I mean, that's always something that's hard to grapple, like any athlete type team sport. And I've certainly had my fair share of that. Especially, you know, I was playing at Oakwood and I was the best player there, and I didn't have to worry about my spot being taken or anything like that. And then I transitioned into college where everybody is just as good as I am, and now I have to fight for a spot really that I've never really had to fight for like that before. And even with the national team, that same type of thing. But in the college environment, like that's almost your new home, and it's very different than the national team experience. It's like, oh, this is my home for the next 4 years, and throughout these 4 years, I'm going to be fighting with all these girls for. It's just two very different experiences. But yes, my coach at Penn State, she was amazing, Erica Dombach, and I've learned so much from her. And she always used to preach a couple of things. Iron sharpens iron. So the more that we work together, the better that we're going to be as a whole. And I love that quote. I think it's so important to not think individually and to try and think more holistically as a team, and how me helping you, you can help me, and it helps the entire team get to the main goal that we're trying to do, which is to win. And another quote she used to say, usually in right before preseason would start, we'd have this meeting, and I don't know if I'm quoting it exactly the same, but it was um, comparing yourself to others takes away your joy, basically. So I can't remember the quote exactly, but it was how how you lose joy the more you compare yourself to others. And I really experienced that throughout like my earlier freshman, sophomore year, because we had some great outside backs, and I was an outside back, and we constantly were fighting for playing time. And that was really tough for me, coming from someone who always played 90 minutes. I never really had to experience actually trying to fight and sitting on the bench. Like I never really had to experience that, and it was really tough. Um, like mentally, obviously, I was like you lose confidence, and it's like, whoa, like I thought I was this great player, and all of a sudden I'm sitting on the bench, and I've never been here before, and how do I navigate this, that type thing. And yeah, I did go through a lot of that, and but like my teammate Maddie Ellison, she was also the right back at Penn State. But she was amazing, and once I realized that she helps me and I help her, and we would start training together, and she would help me with my right foot, I'd help her with her right foot, she'd help me with my left foot, I'd help her with her left foot. Like it gets rid of the competition almost. Like the more you work together, it gets rid of that competition, and then you start cheering for the people that you're playing with because they're making you better regardless if you're getting playing time or etc. That's really how I tried to look at it. Obviously, at the end of the day, it sucks if you're not getting playing time, and it sucks. But the more that you can look at it from a positive perspective, like you're growing from that situation regardless, whether you like it or not, because it might be a really crappy situation, you're still learning and you're growing. As I said before, it's uncomfortable. So in some way, you're moving forward, even if it's not exactly the way that you wanted it to be in. Um, but obviously, yeah, competition, like you want to be the best, you want to be the one that's playing 90 minutes. But I really think it's just staying positive, and putting yourself around the right people, like iron sharpens iron, putting yourself around those people that are getting the 90 minutes, and not maybe congregating with the people who are talk about why they aren't playing, etc. Like go towards the people who know how to do it and are doing it right, and that's what's earning them the playing time. That's what's making them better. That's what kind of I learned. So yeah, but
Can I
it's
ask a question?
tough navigate. It's really tough to navigate.
I've got an interesting question here, Ellie, and it's focused on the professional end of it. When you're and I can only speak to the male side of this. When you are playing for a contract, when it becomes your livelihood, you're playing for your family, for your kids, for your kids' future, and this is how you generate your safety, your revenue. There's always, in every environment I've been in, whether it was Manchester United to the whole host of other clubs I played for on a nomadic, inconsistent career at times, that's always at the back of your mind somewhere. And when you're not playing, I agree, it's hard not to feel, certainly when you're in a professional environment, if I don't play for a long period of time and this team continues to function well without me and I continue to get some minutes here and some minutes there, am I going to become surplus requirements as this team looks to kick on, get better, and buy players or bring in new players at the end of the season? And that in itself becomes very, very difficult to manage, because I know all the teammates make me better. So if I'm on a field and I understand the dynamics of my teammates, I can fit myself into that system to optimize or maximize my performance. But there's always that, I'm cheering for my teammates from the bench, but I have a career to make too. And I always found that an interesting dynamic. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's obviously a bizarre dynamic, and I honestly don't have that much experience at the professional level because I literally just started, and now I'm back here in Connecticut, unfortunately. So, but yes, I mean, I went to FC Northland, and I was surprised by the welcome that I received, because I am coming in and I'm trying to take somebody's spot. And I came in and everybody came up to me as soon as I got there. Hi, my name, like, what, very welcoming, so sweet, so nice. And I was like, wow, I was not expecting this as my first professional experience. I thought nobody was going to talk to me. I thought I was going to be shunned. I don't know, but that's what I had in the back of my mind. But yeah, obviously at the end of the day, it comes down to, like, you want to be on the field as long as you can, 90 minutes, obviously. But one thing that I learned is to kind of never show that emotion. Like, you can show it behind closed doors, but try not to show it to the rest of the team, because that doesn't help the team. So by you not playing in general, but then by you having a bad body language, or by you talking smack, or by you not cheering the rest of the team on during a game, like that doesn't help. So you're just worsening the situation for yourself. And then behind closed doors, you can do what you have to do. I've cried many times behind closed doors, but I really tried not to cry in a certain situation, in front of the team or in front of my teammates, when I was individually sad because I didn't get the minutes, or like that type of selfishness that I was feeling. And I think that's really important. And then when you're with the team, as much as you can, trying to just be positive and trying to get better for you. And by you working with others, that's going to help you get better regardless. So that's how I tried to think about it. But I think, like, body language is huge, and obviously if it's a livelihood, you want to be playing 90 minutes, and it's hard to be cheering the person on that's playing in your spot. Of course, that's competition, and the next training session you go out and give it 110% because you want to be in that spot. You don't want that person to be in that spot, but you're still going to cheer them on at the end of the day if they're in the game and you're not. That's kind of how I
was looking for it. 100%.
Yeah, so I think it's just kind of like continuing to put your foot on the gas, continuing to put your foot on, like, that can only be motivation for you rather than like something that kind of tears you down.
And I'm going to shift this to a coaching perspective for all of the players that are listening to Ellie and Mark be so honest here and say that the mentality and the selflessness that Ellie is describing is exactly the type of player and character that you want in a dressing room, right? It's the concept of we before me, and understanding that we're in it together. And you're not going to be what we call culture killers and sit and moan. Like, it's really enriching to hear how you're reliving the experience and the way that you kind of you've led your career to this point. So some super advice. Elle, I want to I want to shift a little bit for the benefit of the people on the line. And guys, I do see a couple of questions, and I promise you I will ask them as we kind of wrap up the conversation a little bit. But Ellie, for people that might be dreaming of school, how did you know Penn State was the right place for you to call home? What was that process like, and what advice could you share with people that might have college in their future?
Yeah. So I actually hated my entire like college recruiting process. I hated it. And now looking back, I was like extremely privileged to be getting all these offers from all these schools and to have the chance to go on all these visits and all of that. But in the moment, I really hated it because I was a sophomore. Like I didn't know what I was eating for dinner tomorrow. And these coaches were like, "Oh, what do you want to major in?" Or, "Oh, look at all of our nice, great facilities." Like it was very overwhelming for me, and I hated it. I hated it. Um, but but now I realize I was extremely privileged, and I'm so grateful for that, and will always be grateful for the experience that I had. But yeah, so my first college visit was to Penn State, actually. And then I think I went to Maryland, I went to Wake Forest, like a few other schools, North Carolina. And then I was going for my second visit to Penn State. And I was in the car with my mom, and we were driving, and it's like 6 hours from Connecticut, so it's a decent drive. So I was in the car, and I was like, I don't know if I want to go to Penn State. And she looked at me and she's like, are you for sure? Because if you don't want to go, I'm gonna go far around because it's too long of a drive to go all the way there for you to not even want to go anymore. And I was like, no, 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 no. Like, let's so I ended up going for my second visit, and it was great. Like I ended up loving it as I originally loved it in the beginning, but I think it was just a very overwhelming process for me. So I'm really glad that they've made those adjustments in the recruiting, that you can only recruit junior, or like at some point in your junior to senior year. I think that's really important just for psyche of young athletes. Um, but yeah, I I don't know. I think like being that young and not knowing exactly what I wanted in the school, I kind of just went with my gut rather than doing like a pro and cons list.
Okay.
But no, so I ended up just kind of going with my gut and kind of was like, where did I feel my best? Where did I feel like I would have a family? Where did it feel like home? Because eventually that's your home for the next 4+ years. And I picked Penn State, and it ended up being like the best decision I could have made. And I'm so grateful that I had that experience, and the coaching staff was amazing. I've made so many great friends who were originally my teammates there that I'm still in touch with today. And I'm really glad that I had that experience. But I think just kind of go with your gut and where you feel at home the most, because everything else, like there's just so much uh, clutter, like all of the clutter that all the coaches try to sell you, or everything. And just at the end of the day, go with your gut and go where you felt like you had a family, because that's what it is at the end of the day to me. I had a great family at Penn State, so
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I think it's really important that people hear that from somebody who's been in the shoes that ultimately they're looking to walk in. So
yeah,
talk a little bit, Ellie. We said kind of the title of what we want to speak about was What I Wish I Knew, and transitioning to college life as a freshman, living away from home and the sacrifices, nobody there having to guide you on managing your work and your life,
yeah,
workouts with schoolwork, food choices, personal life. Like,
yeah.
what if there was a piece of advice that you could give your younger self, and as a result give the people on the line that might be going into this situation, what would it be, and can you give us some stories about that?
Yes. Gosh, I have like so many things.
Go.
I think
Like,
one thing is like nobody has it figured out. So like, but in that instance, like when I originally went to college, everyone else around me, it seemed like they had it figured out. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why do I feel I'm running around every day with my head chopped off for like my entire freshman year? but realistically, everybody was doing that, but nobody wanted to talk about it, but everybody was doing it. So like that was like one of my first revelations. Like everybody doesn't know what they're doing. It's not just you. And eventually you'll get a routine, you'll get a flow, you'll feel like you're supposed to be there. It'll come, but it does take time. Like obviously it's just a transition. Um, so I would say that I did call my mom a lot crying that first year for sure. Thanks, Mom, for being there for me. Shout out to her. But another lesson that I wish I took advantage of a lot earlier was um, working smarter, not harder. And like I said, when I was younger, I used to go outside and juggle the ball for like 2 or 3 hours, um, and just like exerting yourself too much rather than in the right ways can be very exhausting. And I wish I had known that earlier. We're going out for an hour and a half. Like it didn't matter how long you were going out, but if you were doing the right the right you could spend 30 minutes and get more out of a 30-minute session than spending an hour and a half outside with the ball, you know? So just like those little things, I started to learn like as I got older, and I wish I was like, oh yeah, like I don't have to spend 2 hours outside if I have a plan before I go and work out and self-train type thing. That kind of took me a while. Um, but yeah, and also like with the work smarter, not harder, um, I as I said, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and in my junior year, that's when it was probably the worst, and I started to have lots of anxiety. I had very bad anxiety, panic attacks, because of all this pressure that I was putting on myself, and the fact that I was working really hard, but I wasn't working in the right way. I wasn't working in the smart way, and I was putting all this pressure on me. I remember that summer before going in for preseason, I all I could do was wake up at 6 a.m., go do all of my stuff, come home, and just do it the next day. Like I was on like I don't even know. I was just on this like repeat mode, and it wasn't mindful. It was just like what I was doing because I felt like I needed to do it, and I was just trying to be the best and da 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 da. But it actually was not helpful at all, and it wasn't a smart way to go about wanting to get better, and a mindfulness of wanting to get better. And then I had to go through this pretty awful mental health thing to realize that. But I'm really grateful for it now. I probably wouldn't have said that back when I was in the midst of it, but um, just taking care of yourself at the end of the day, and not getting too consumed by something that you want so badly. I remember a coach in the national team who was like, you have to want it, like you have to want this, or else you're not going to get it, but you can't want it too badly because it'll destroy you. And at that moment it was literally destroying me. Like it was all I was doing. So obviously, like to that aspect, making sure you're doing other things, that you're having a life, that you are being a teenager, that you're being a college student, that it's not all just about soccer, and you're more than just an athlete at the end of the day. Something that I had to find out the hard way, unfortunately. But now I'm here to talk about it, and it's just so important to not only identify yourself as an athlete, and that you're so much more than that, and like athletics is just a part of who I am, and now happens to be my profession, which I'm super super glad about. But like when I'm going through a rough patch, like it can't be what I lean on when that is the rough patch. So that's something that I've learned, but I felt like I kind of had to go through that experience to really learn that lesson, unfortunately. But um, it made me stronger, and now I can share it with you guys. Um,
For sure. And
yeah,
Mark, Willow, maybe you can talk a little bit to this. And again, Ellie, thank you so much for that insight. Mark,
of course.
um, or what are the small things that make the big difference when you reach, you both, Willow, you've had your professional career, and Ellie, you're in the middle of yours.
Yeah.
But when you talk about finding that balance, what did it look like? Are there good examples that you could share? Because there's the balance without it going and tipping too far off the other side. And
Mhm.
when you're in the midst of things, how important is it to maintain, obviously, you know, the choices that you're making. So you can go out and socialize, but I'm not going to eat a meal necessarily that offsets a load of good work, or I'm not, you know, I can go out, but I want to go to bed for a good time. Willow, could you maybe touch upon some of the habits that you got into to help, you know, you sustain the, you know, the longevity of the career that you had?
It's a good question. And Ellie, I think that what you just discussed quickly there, I mean, what a mature attitude for somebody who's beginning a professional journey. I wish I had that mentality at the beginning of mine. Being mindful and aware of, I think being aware of who I really was, rather than playing up to a stereotype, which is expected. And certainly in a highly competitive sports environment, sometimes you are expected to play up to this stereotype. That's not always who you really are. And being very candid, I didn't probably realize who I was until I left the game, this soccer bubble that had me wrapped up in something else. But kudos to you on that. That's a really big step forward early on in your career. In terms of habits, being consistent and being disciplined are the two things that got me a 16-year career. First and foremost, the fundamentals, the basics got me on the soccer field, got me on the training field, made the managers and coaches I played for realize I was reliable. I started to accept some of the things that certainly at a professional level weren't my strengths, but I wanted them to be my strengths, and accepted what I was really good at. So I started to refine and develop some of the things I was really good at, and started to understand where that fits into the system of having really good.
Sorry, Willow, can the people on the line, guys, just please make sure that your mics are always kept off, just the background noise that drops in. I can do it a little bit, but if you can all be mindful of that. Thanks, Mark. Sorry, bud.
No worries. So understanding what attributes I have that contributes to the team. So instead of me wanting to be this player number 10 as a midfielder who could dribble and beat players and be creative, I understood that as a 6. As I moved back as a player, my role was more defined around doing the basics really well, protecting my centre backs, anticipating forward passes. As soon as I receive the ball, can I play forward into the creative players? As soon as I started to understand where my strengths lied and how I could refine and develop them in training, and if you look at my career stats, it goes from small kind of 10 games here, 8 games here, 20 games here, to 200 games in a 5 or 6 year spell. And consistency for me comes from being disciplined in your habits, accepting what you're good at, knowing what you're good at, and minimizing some of the things you're not so good at. And then doing these things that you know are fundamentals consistently well every single day. So hydrating, sleeping, recovering, not socializing as you alluded to all of the time. It's important to get a break away from the environment we're in sometimes, but minimizing that, because ultimately you have a short career or a short span of time in college where you're going to play. And all of these things you do well day in, day out, they just become a habit, and it becomes very normal. At the beginning, it might be a fight. You might be challenging some of the laziness we all have within us, some of the beliefs you have that you think are right but don't fit the environment. But once you start to practice something and you become disciplined at it, it becomes a habit, it becomes much more easier.
And I want to ask you both to share something personal reference of a comment again that I'm going to talk. Some of the people on the line will have heard me as a coach say this, but I'm going to ask you guys: the people that you surround yourself with can ultimately define and support your success, but the same choices could derail it. So again, Ellie, you've spoken of how caring and supportive your family are and your teammates, you know, your friends. Willow, obviously, you know, you being in a professional environment, again, it's difficult if your friends are your teammates and there's challenges there. But to both of you, speak to any challenges that you had to overcome with people who perhaps had suggested they wanted something for you and were supportive, but maybe didn't demonstrate that, and the tough decision that you had to make to follow a dream, and the sacrifices that have been made as a result of you allowing you to achieve the success that you've both had. Ellie, you go first.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I think that was huge. within my college career, because everybody that was on the team with me, we all wanted to be great and stuff like that. But then you have like your individual cliques and who goes out and who works on stuff before practice, and then who just like shows up and does that and then leaves. And it's hard to grapple with, because maybe you like somebody who doesn't like off the field as a friend, but then on the field they're like the most negative person in the world, and you're like, well, do I want to surround myself with this person, and da 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 da. But I think like at the end of the day, for me, it was kind of like, okay, what are my goals, and is this person going to help me get there or not? And maybe it's fun for the time being to be friends with or around a group of people that um, isn't isn't helping you in any sort of positive way. Maybe it's fun for the moment, but down the road it won't be fun. So like having that kind of outlook on it was really helpful to me. So like maybe now I'm regretting staying in and not going out, but 2 months from now when I'm in national team camp, I won't, type thing. So like that's how I tried to look at it. And I think at the end of the day, it was all about like my goals, and just surrounding yourself with positive people, people who wanna go and train, who wanted to be positive and uplifting and help each other train and help each other get better, rather than like steering to the people who just talk negatively and, ugh, I don't want to run today, or ugh, why do we have to train today, type thing. Like that it can be really psychologically, like once one person says that, like they can go through the entire team and it can down the entire team. So that's so psychologically can be damaging for a team. So just trying to like stick to the people that are most like you and that want the same things that you want, I think is important. And that goes by actions, not really what they're saying, because anything can come out of anybody's mouth. But at the end of the day, it's what they're doing. Are they going out, or are they getting their sleep? Um, type thing. So that's kind of what I tried to look for.
It's perfect. Willow, anything to add?
Yeah, I think, and I like to be surrounded by people who share some common beliefs and values as I do, but I also like to be around somebody who's not afraid to challenge me on something I believe in. One, to give me the chance to emphasize or give me even more strength to why I believe in something, or get me to see a different lens or a different perspective on what I think is right at that particular time, whatever I may be doing. So I've been in locker rooms where it's very easy to pick out, as Ellie mentioned, the people that want to complain about training, doing an extra practice. Oh, do we have to do this today? Whatever it may be, that's got a negative connotation. It does have an effect on you sometimes, because I found myself when I wasn't playing to act the same way, and to say the same things, and you get caught in this trap. And all the while, the coach and manager is looking at you and looking at your body language and assessing if you're ready to be in the first team or be a starter or even be in the 18 and be on the bench. And again, as you get a little bit more mature and older, and Ellie, again, kudos, you seem to have this figured out already. Mid to late 20s for me was when I started walking into a locker room and scanning and listening to the people that had a positive outlook, that were doing the right things, that were eating the right things, and always in the gym doing their extra work. And I just tag along, and you start to build a bond, and you listen, and then you kind of filter in, and they're the groups that really can, one, help you become better, but two, really help build something of meaning when you're talking about club culture. And it also weeds out the people that aren't buying in, and eventually they'll fall by the wayside, because there's always strength in numbers, certainly with a positive mentality.
So I love this, and guys, as I've done every conversation, I've scribbled a bunch of things, and I want to try to summarize for some of the people on the line the things that kind of jumped to my mind as I listened to Mark and Ellie speak. Ellie, you referenced the importance of this. What are my goals? And I would say in every preseason I had, and both as a coach and a player, the conversation was, is this going to help me or help us? And if the answer to that question is no, don't do it.
Exactly.
The second thing is, Ellie, you spoke about the people you choose to surround yourself with. There's a phrase, surround yourself with people who get it. it's really brilliant when you find people who are on the same page as you and share a belief system that motivates you to be a better person. I would strongly encourage everybody to do that, because then on some levels of self-reflection, would you like to play with you? Right? If I had to put on a jersey and I had to line up next to somebody else, but that somebody else was me, would I enjoy that? Right? What type of teammate am I? So would you enjoy playing with you based on the actions and behaviors that you're suggesting? And then ultimately for both of you, you've said there's battles that you go into, you earn the right to have success, and success leaves clues. So the habits and the daily actions that you are producing off the field, or the type of intensity that you're training with, success leaves clues, and so does failure. So to everybody on the line, again, I think you've got two brilliant examples of people who practice what they preach and walk their talk. And it's so important that, you know, the people who are looking to try to build careers, you listen to the words that have come out of both Mark and Ellie's mouths, because this is real, right? This is a professional perspective that you're getting. So so thank you both so much for that. I'm conscious we're coming up to an hour. I want to open it up. Jerice, it's as if your ears were burning because me and Ellie were mentioning you earlier. So hello, buddy. Jerice asks Ellie, can you share if there was ever a time that you asked yourself what's holding you back from getting to where you want to be? And if so, what were some of those things, and how did you go about achieving that? So what was stopping you, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so yeah, that was a big reason why I started seeing like a sports psych at Penn State, which I was privileged to have in the first place, because I know a lot of people don't have those type of resources. But I had that resource, so I tried to use it. And I originally wanted to go because I felt I not only was having anxiety issues and stuff like that, but I felt like I was holding myself back. And I was the reason why I wasn't getting to that next level, or I wasn't X, Y, and Z, whatever it was. So I started going to see the sports psych, and at the end of the day, it came down to like just not really believing in myself, and just not having that confidence that I should have had, and that I should have just had in myself in general. Like, I should be a confident person. Everybody should be a confident person in their abilities, and I didn't feel that way for some reason. So I really struggled with that, and then again I struggled with the pressure. So I really try to not put a ton of pressure on myself anymore, and to just go out and have fun whenever I'm training. Because if it's fun, then you're getting something out of it. But when you're so consumed in like wanting to be so good, and not ever making mistakes, and trying to be this perfect player, like that's never gonna happen. I was never gonna live up to that, and I think that's what was detrimental to me. Like before games, I'd be like, okay, like in a game, when a pass would get intercepted that I would play, that's all I would think about for the rest of the game, was the pass that I played and someone intercept. So like little things like that, like psych things that can really like get you out of just having fun of the game. And like that's gonna happen. Like my passes are probably gonna get intercepted every once in a while. Probably, I hope not more than like once or twice, but like nothing's gonna be perfect. And I think once I started to realize that and know that I was gonna make mistakes and accept that and like embrace that, I've been able to play so much more free and have just so much more fun with it, rather than like just consuming myself in this like perfectionistic bubble. So that was probably one of the biggest things that I felt that was holding me back. And just like realizing that I can't be perfect. Like no one can be perfect, but I can achieve to be great. But I can't achieve to be perfect.
That's Ellie, again, it's brilliant, and I really do appreciate the vulnerability that you're speaking with here. It's such a powerful lesson for people. Again, just trying to, for people who might not have heard this, or to extend upon some of what Ellie was saying, that the psych things, and especially negative responses, typically a lot of players will be in a position where they get frustrated or disappointed in a mistake, because obviously they're trying to do their best for their team and they don't want to appear like they're letting people down. And that's when we would get frustrated. But if you take yourself out of the game and it takes you 2 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds to stay in your own head, then in essence for that time we're playing a player down. And that could be far more damaging to your team than the action that you just performed that you're now thinking about. So really try to do your best to move on. And Ellie, the point that you said about just enjoying it, again, and Mark, you're better placed to talk than I am about this, but sometimes it's nice to try challenge you guys to play for the little boy or the little girl that first started kicking a ball around in a park, right? Or on the playground at recess, that was just playing for nothing other than the fun and delight of playing, because maybe there's people on the line that are now 13, 15, 17 and thinking about what comes next, and it can become a job before it's a job. And to those people, again, emphasizing just the part of the game that we all love, which is the, just the playing element of it is so important. So Flavio, Ellie or Mark, how do you balance wanting to be liked by your teammates and competing with them for a spot? A difficult conversation, difficult question. And I'm going to go one more that we have after this, and then we'll kind of put a hard line on it. So who wants to tackle it?
I guess we both can. I'll give you the quick answer. I didn't care whether somebody liked me or not when I was younger. I was very single-minded and very resilient. For whatever reason, you can ask my mom and dad, my brother. I still can't explain it to this day, but I wasn't trying to be liked by my teammates. I didn't care if I was liked by my teammates. I just wanted to play. Goes back to your point you just made. I just wanted to get out on the field and play, help my team win. Score goals, do all the fun stuff, dribble with the ball. So it's something I never dealt with, but now on the outside as a coach looking in, for multiple different personalities in any group, I think one of the first things you have to start, and this is where the psychosocial becomes even more valuable, the first place you have to get comfortable is with who you are. Who am I as a person? What am I comfortable with? And it's very difficult for somebody in their late teens, even younger than that, to understand that process and how to work through it. So one, I think as a club, as a college, it's a must to have a psychosocial resource to help you put these mechanisms in place. And two, you can as a coach, even if you don't have a psychology background, you can either collectively bring the group together and help them work through exercises on understanding what social acceptance is, understanding that people are different. We have different personalities. We come from different backgrounds. It starts with building an understanding of why we're all a little different sometimes, why we're all at different ability levels within a group. It's not that you're better than me, it's I might be a late developer. It's like right now I'm struggling with this phase of my development, and you as a teammate can actually help me with this, because I might be better at this than you are at this, one thing or another. So there are lots of different mechanisms you can put in place, and we could go on forever. But I think from a coach perspective, it's add a psychosocial element resource to your environment. And from a player perspective, if you are at a point where you want to explore who am I, what are my characteristics, what do I value, they're the types of questions that can start to bring an understanding to who you really are and how you act in a social environment.
Do you want to try tackle it, El? Or are you comfortable with what Mark said?
I can speak if you would like me to, but I also agree very much with what he said. I didn't much very care about what people thought of me either. I was like, I want to play, and you can like me and we can be friends, or you don't have to like me and I can just do what I do best. And I think that's great. I think at the end of the day, if you have to grapple with, wanting to be your best or wanting to have somebody like you, you should want to be your best. And you don't want somebody who has to make you choose between the two. Like surround yourself with great people who want you to be great and who also can support you in that. And if you have to choose whether you want to be really good or you want a friend, well, I think that's easy. But But yeah, I mean that's something that I've had to deal with a little bit, but I've tried to kind of go with my goal at the end of the day, and staying motivated, and my goal of wanting to be the best and not really caring if you wanted to be my friend or not. And I I heard this quote, and it was, it's lonely at the top. So like the more great you get, the less people are rooting for you, and the less people that you're gonna find at the top with you. So like don't feel like you need all these friends type thing. Like I have a very small friend group. Um, and those are the people I rely on, and X, Y, and Z. But don't feel like you have to have all these friends, because at the end of the day, it's just, you just need a few people to lean on, and you don't need to have a million friends and be liked by everybody. That's never going to happen. So keep your goals in the back of your head at the end of the day, but also understand that you don't need to be liked by everybody, and I think that's really important too.
Amazing. And just to close, Ellie, a question from Alex. Did you, if you ever sat in the bench for a game or felt you weren't getting ample playing time, how did you handle that? Obviously, you said that there was maybe a period in your career where you first went to Penn State and it was an adjustment, but how did you handle that?
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting because I actually played a lot my freshman year at Penn State, and then I took the fall off because we went to the U20 World Cup, and then I came back in the 2017 season. So I took 2016 off with the team. So I came back for the 2017 season, and we happened to have really great three outside backs. So we were kind of like all rotating time, and that was really really difficult for me, and I cried a lot, I will say that. And I complained a lot, but behind closed doors, and not to my teammates, but maybe like you have to have an outlet. So I would complain to my mom or somebody like that, someone outside of obviously the confines of the team. Like you don't want to affect the team in any way, but I did need a release. So, and I understood like that's normal, that's natural to like want playing time. Like I'm a competitor, I want to be playing 90 minutes. Why am I not doing that? So like complaining a little bit, but then understanding that the next day you just have to go out and work 100%. And at the end of the day, like you're growing, and that's how I tried to look at it as much as I can. Or as much as that's how I tried to look at it as much as I could. Like, okay, I'm still gonna go out tomorrow, and now I'm even more motivated because I didn't get the playing time I thought I wanted or I thought I deserved. So I'm gonna go out and give 110%, and just that type of like turning it into motivation rather than letting it get you down, is what I tried to do. But it's human nature to obviously like be sad about it and make sure you're feeling all of those feelings. Maybe not with the team, but you need a release for that, and yes, that's behind closed doors. But at the end of the day, being motivated and still cheering those people on that are in your spot, because you're gonna get your chance one day, and just make sure you're ready. So that's all I was trying to do, going out and giving it 100% every day, at every training session, because I knew at some point my time was coming and I wanted to be ready for it. So that's kind of how I tried to look at it. But it's really hard, and I think it's different for everybody, how they tackle that situation. But that's just kind of my little 2 cents.
No, that's Ellie, that's amazing. And look, I want to speak on behalf, obviously, Team Beyond Pulse, myself, Mark, but then everybody that's tuned in live with us now, or will be listening to this on demand, to say thank you so much for the lessons, the insight, the honesty. I think it's a wonderful example for young people to listen to this and be inspired. If they want to find you again, Elle, if they want to follow you on social media platforms, where could they go for you?
Yes, I'm on Instagram. That's really kind of like my main platform. I have Facebook, but I don't post anything fun there. My Instagram, I've tried to start posting like my trainings and stuff like that, and my core exercises, like whatever I'm doing there. So you can totally find me on Instagram. I'll probably get a Twitter because I feel like I should have one. Everybody else has one, so I'll probably get one, but I don't have one right now. So I'll get
And
on that. That's my next task.
and what's your Instagram handle?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I think it's
Just
at
to say it.
Ellie. I know. It's It's at Ellie, and then I think the Jean has 2 E's in it. I'm trying to. I think that's it, but I can't find it right now. But
Okay.
that should be.
Yeah,
So,
we will post it again. We will post
yeah.
it again. As a
Sorry,
little
I
thing.
know. Yeah, I don't know exactly. But no, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. I love stuff like this. I love bouncing ideas off other people. It's been a pleasure. So thank you very
No, you're
much.
That's
Appreciate
brilliant.
it.
to everybody listening. Thank you for spending your Monday with us. We hope you enjoyed, obviously, the first ever Player Series episode, and we'll look forward to announcing a few more. So they've got big boots to try to follow, though. So Ellie, thank you ever so much, and guys listening, we look forward to seeing and speaking to you guys again. So thank you for your time.
Of course.